Welcome to How to Run a Successful Business and Still Have a Life. My name is Stacey Morgan, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by my one-on-one coaching program, Simply You and I. You can have some personalized business coaching sessions with me and really get a deep dive into your business, onto where it's at, kind of get some reflection on exactly where you're at, and then make a plan to move forward. If you're feeling stuck in your business, if you feel like your wheels are spinning and you've been going around and around, then please jump onto simplystaceymorgan.com and book a session with me today. All right. So last week we spent the week talking about outsourcing, and we were talking about this. This got a bit heated in my Thrive Mastermind program this month, because whilst we spent a lot of time talking about the outsourcing of things in our business, I shared how I had outsourced my accounting work, and I shared how I immediately had to outsource my teaching because I had so many customers, dodgy problem to have, I know, in the beginning days of my business. But we've got a lot of mums as part of Thrive, and I know a lot of you listening are mums as well. And the question came up, I have no problem outsourcing in my business. If I need a cleaner to come in and do that in my business, I have no problem with that. If I need somebody to do my marketing, no problem paying for somebody to do my Facebook ads. I just don't know how to outsource the other stuff in my world. And I thought this could be a really valuable podcast episode, because yes, I do outsource a lot of things in my business, but I tell you what, that's been great for my business, but it hasn't been the game changer for me and for myself and for my life. The game changer for me is when I started to outsource things from within my home. And so I thought I would spend a little bit of time today talking about that. One of our fabulous Thrive members, Janelle, she is putting her son in daycare. He's 17 months old. And so she's going through that, transition and that tricky period where if your child hasn't been in care before, there's so much of a process that goes along with that. You have to start making lunches and sending lunches. You have to pack a bag for them during the day and send them off with spare clothes and spare things. And when our kids first went into daycare, we needed to send spare nappies, food and nappies. And it took us so long to get into the groove of having the daycare bag packed correctly with all the things. Not a day came when I didn't pick one of the kids up from daycare and they said, they ran out of, nappies today. They ran out of food today. They ran out of clothes today. They ran every day. I just could not get that balance right. As much as I would pack the night before and I would try and be organized, it was just something every single week. And so getting into that groove is really challenging when you're doing it for the first time. And I remember as well, it's not just that physical challenge of having to get everybody ready in the morning and having to get everybody picked up by the right time in the afternoon, but the emotional challenge of that separation anxiety that happens when your child is entering a new space, when they're entering a new activity, when they're doing something and you can't stay with them. And they've spent so much time with you and so much time doing things with you and going along with you. And I know my kids in the early days went everywhere with me and taught every class with me and were strapped to me for every plie and every tondu that happened in Port Macquarie Performing Arts history. And it's hard when they expect that, and then things change. So this is a shout out to any of those new mums, any mums who are going through that process for the very first time, who are thinking, is it time for me to try and outsource some of my childcare? And what does that look like? So there are so many different options, and you can choose whatever works and whatever works best for you and for your family. I have relatives and friends who have their kids in family daycare. I have grandmas and grandpas who look after kids periodically, and we kind of were lucky enough to have a mix of long daycare and also friends and family who looked after our kids when they were young. But I went a good 9 months with Lucinda before I decided that it was time for her to go into care, whereas for Henry, I think it was something like 3.5 months. It was completely different. And making that decision for us, we always started the kids with one day. They would have one day at daycare, and perhaps they would have one day, Fridays they used to have with grandma. So, they would have Fridays with grandma, they would have Wednesdays at daycare, and the other days we would kind of just juggle how things worked. I remember I had a staff member go on maternity leave, and I had to try and cover for her and had to teach on a Thursday morning. And so Lucinda came with me to do that class, but she was just at that age where she wanted to walk around and wanted to move. Like, she was moving and I just could not keep up with her, let alone try and teach a class with other people's children that I was trying to take care of and take care of my child as well. So I ended up dropping her to Nanny Margs on that day, which is Heath's mum. And, you know, I can't underestimate that power and what is so incredible about us having that amount of family support around. And I don't take that lightly at all, because I know so many people don't have that family support. And so for us, it was really lovely to have a combination of different things. But in saying that as well, that irregularity of who Lucinda was going to made it really emotional for her and really emotional for me. Not so much for Heath. She was fine for Heath. When Heath would drop her off at anything, she'd wave and blow him a kiss and go about the day. Whereas for me, it would be like a scene from the Oscars. It was, the best actress goes to Lucinda Morgan, because she would clutch to me and she would scream and she would throw herself on the floor and she would just perform, just bring the house down with this stellar performance. And that would just, cut me up for the rest of the day. I would be emotional till like 10:30 in the morning, just trying to get over that. And then the same, you'd go to pick her up from daycare and she'd cry because she didn't want to leave. And I was like, you are torturing me, child. I don't know how to win. So it's completely up to you when it comes to choosing where you go. But I would say try and be consistent. And I think, that didn't help for Lucinda, that she was going to one person one day, one person the other day, and daycare the other day. And it was kind of swapped and changed around. She didn't know whether she was coming or going. So if you can build that consistency and that routine into your child's life, I find that, so much easier. Of course, you need to choose a place where you feel comfortable, where, there is a warmth and there is a loving understanding from the educators, and you feel that. And that's, at each of the touch points of their business, because that's really important when you're handing over your most prized possession every day. You want to make sure that it's somewhere that you feel comfortable with and that that they're going to be comfortable in as well. So that regularity for them is important. That regularity for you is important as well. And I found that there were certain tasks that I would save for a Wednesday every week, because those Wednesdays, they were chock-a-block full of activity. And I don't mean activity like I booked in a lunch and went out for coffee. I mean like back-to-back, minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour work. Because Wednesdays were my day. They were go day. So I would just get stuck straight in. And our daycare was about 20 minutes away from our house. And so I wouldn't even come home to get that work done. I would settle in at the cafe that was like 2 minutes drive from the daycare. And I would just go there and be there all day and just work until they swept up around me, packed the tables and chairs around me. And then I left. I had plenty of coffees and milkshakes and breakfast, brunch and lunch and afternoon tea there. So, I wasn't completely freeloading. I made sure that I made the most of it, but it was just go. So I encourage you to really think about the tasks that you have and that the time that you're going to have. And if you're going to have that one day or those 3 days or those 5 days to get stuff done in your business, you want to be doing the things that are driving the business forward. You want to be doing those things that no one else can be doing. You don't want to spend that time emptying your inbox. You want to spend that time returning those emails and really getting into those things, getting back to people, doing those things that are urgent and important on those days. And you want to plan that ahead. You don't kind of want to just you've done the drop off, you're feeling all emotional, you go and sit down and then you go, what am I going to do now? You want to make sure that planning happens for that. And so the outsourcing of the childcare was really important, but the other things that I'm outsourcing in my world are equally as important. So I don't iron clothes in my house, and I've said this 100 times before, and there needs to be some kind of normalization of me not having to do the ironing and you not having to do the ironing either. There are so many people in my family, especially, who roll their eyes when I tell them I don't iron anything. and there's so much judgment that's involved with that. And I don't know why ironing became this thing that's been put up on a pedestal in my family, but it really has. But I don't iron in my family. So we Googled ironing in Port Macquarie, and we found that there are people who love to iron and that you can pay them to do so. And so we do that. We send our ironing out every couple of weeks. Of course, we don't send out the things that are, you know, super duper important. I wouldn't send Heath work shirts if he has to go to work the next day and they all of a sudden disappear out of the house. But, you know, the kids' t-shirts and the, you know, pair of shorts and that pair of pants and, you know, all that stuff that kind of just, it stacks up. And before you know it, it ends up being a massive job. Some of them even pick it up from your house and deliver it back. All you've got to do is give them coat hangers. Like, living in the future, people. Outsource that if you can. I also outsource my groceries. I do my groceries online and they just get delivered to my house at a time that I know that I'm going to be there. Amazing. I'm sure plenty of you do that as well. That's not really not so breakthrough at the moment. But, you know, things like bread and milk, we go through bread and milk daily. And so, you know, every second day, bread and milk gets delivered to my house. And that is, you know, an amazing part of my existence and the lifestyle that I choose because I run my own business. I also have people on my team who, you know, will go to the post office and pay this bill for me that I can give my credit card to and say, I need you to go here and do this and here and do this and take this to Officeworks and get this printed and get that done. And just that life admin-y stuff. And I often joke that my work wife is like exactly that, my work wife. I could be so productive if I had a wife that was at home doing all of these things for me. And lo and behold, she does. And I pay her well to do it. And that works out brilliantly. And she's editing this podcast too. So she's really going to enjoy that. Thank you, Christy. And so for us, you know, in our world, Heath and I really never had any discussions or arguments over how that was all going to work. We used to in the early days. He'd come home without milk and I'd go, don't you know we need milk? And then, you know, that would start a fight. And we don't have that problem anymore because the milk and the bread just arrives and we well and truly make sure that it gets eaten. The ironing gets sent out, it gets done. Things like dropping dry cleaning off and picking dry cleaning up, all outsourced. Going to the post office to pay the bills, going to pick up those flowers. Your local florists, how good is this? Your local florists will take a spreadsheet of the people in your world that you care about and that you love and perhaps that work for you and their birthdays. And then on those days, they will just send them flowers and bill you for it. Game changing. I don't have to worry about ducking in to get things because they just happen. And that's the outsourcing that really makes a big difference in my world. Yes, the outsourcing in my business makes a difference, but this outsourcing as well. So to Janelle and anyone else who's worrying about, you know, how they're going to be juggling their world, how they're going to transition into new different phases. You know, Nina Christensen always talks about life being seasons and how, you know, seasons can be different lengths and they don't have to go for a certain amount of time that you have in your head. But while you're in this season, this is how things are going to roll. And that's just how it's, you know, you're going to deal with it. I love that mindset because it just gives you permission to try new things. And so in this season of my life, I'm outsourcing my ironing and my kids are in daycare, or Henry's in daycare now, the other two are at school. But I encourage you in this season of your world, even if it's you're transitioning into a new season, try things, figure out what works for you, figure out what your budget can allow. I didn't always, in the early days of the business, I couldn't afford to send the ironing out. So I was, you know, not buying anything that was linen. I was only buying things that didn't need ironing. But if your budget allows for it, and if that's where you want to spend your time, you know, I don't want to spend 3 hours doing the basket of ironing of all the kids' stuff and the school uniforms, etc. So I'm happy to pay that money to get that 3 hours back to sit on the floor and play Lego with the kids. If that's where you're at in your world, then all power to you. And if you're just waiting for permission, here it absolutely is. There are several ways that you can outsource. And I'm more than happy to talk you through all of the things that I do and the things that work for us and have worked over the different seasons in our world at any time. So please make sure you stay in touch. Send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at Simply Stacey Morgan, or you can book a personalized and tailored business coaching session with me as part of my Simply You and I program. You can do that right now at simplystaceymorgan.com. I appreciate you spending time listening to, you know, me talk about all the ways in which our world comes together. I hope your world is coming together wherever you're at. And of course, if you're listening to this and you got something out of it, share it with other mums in your community, share it with other mums in your mums group, in your Facebook, that are friends with you on Facebook. Take a screenshot, throw it on your Insta story, and tag any mums that you know, if they, there's some people that are really agonizing over the ironing this weekend. Make sure they know that they don't have to do it and that that's okay. I appreciate you listening and spending the time. We won't be talking about outsourcing next week. We're going into a 3-part series about my favorite things. Yay! One of my favorite episodes to do. So I really hope you can join me then. Have a fantastic week. And thanks again for listening.